G'day everyone, how you going? It's Dom Italiano here, host of the Sustainable Creative Show. This is episode number 7 with Simon Imrei. Simon is a really close friend of mine and someone who I find really inspiring. He always just manages to create beautiful videos and incredible music, and even the way he puts on a CD launch, just the attention to detail is always so impressive. And it was clear to me after this conversation just how all that kind of comes together, and the amount of effort and energy he puts into everything that he puts out. So he delivered probably the greatest piece of advice I've ever had when it comes to putting a project together that is really timely, because I'm about to do another album in February. So thank you for that, Simon. Thank you for this conversation. I really appreciate it. If you enjoy this kind of thing that I'm doing, I'd love you to, like the page, subscribe to the podcast, send me any feedback that you've got. I continue to have wonderful conversations with great creative people, and the feedback that I'm getting so far has been really positive. So thank you for watching, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week with a new guest, and I'm not sure who it's going to be, so we'll see. All right, cheers, bye-bye. Simon Imrei, welcome to this episode of The Sustainable Creative. How are you?
I'm good.
That's good. Thank you for inviting me into your house.
That's okay.
I don't have a place in Melbourne that I can do this, and because I live so far from Melbourne, which I can actually see. So Simon has a map on the wall over there, and when I think about it, and I look at that map, I can see I actually really do live a long way from where most of the rest of the world lives.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah,
that was Arts and Craft Day the other day at my house.
Ah, that's good. Yeah. Is that so I might actually take a photo of it and then put the photo in here so people can see. But it looks like what you might be doing is plotting out some places where you can go regional touring around Victoria.
Yes.
Is that what you're doing?
Yes.
Ah.
Yes.
You've got gold stars on the map, so it could be places where you've got, I've been to that bakery, I've been to that bakery.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a tour of all the Beechworth bakeries that exist around the place. Look, it probably was not designed to be sort of released to the public. It was very much a quick, what can I find at Officeworks, to just construct myself a bit of a visual representation of where people go.
I take it back, there might not be a photograph, but there might be.
Knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's it takes a long time to scour through and find out the venues that people go when they do regional touring, and the various different sort of routes in all directions stemming out from Melbourne. So that's a visual representation, so I sort of know where the gaps are and where I sort of need to think about moving forward.
So I might just ask you about that. I have some prepared questions, but this isn't one of them. But it is certainly related to what I want to talk about with this. So a few months ago, you released an album, Sum of Scenes.
The Sum of Scenes, I did.
Yeah, The Sum of Scenes. And I imagine that what you're looking to do is a tour, like a regional tour, so sort of in support of that a few months down the track.
Yeah, so I've been trying to get it organised for a little while. I'd hoped to sort of be starting around about sort of nowish or mid to late October or somewhere around then. But as it stands, I'm not going to start till next year. But it's about supporting the album, and it's also about sort of long term trying to find a series of trips and tour routes that I can go on to just sort of establish a bit of a long-term goal of getting to know towns, getting to know people in different areas of Victoria. Things like, there might be a folk festival or something in some area of the state, really getting to know that area, playing around there, just over the next couple of years, getting a bit out of the atypical book a north side Melbourne gig.
Yeah.
And three or four of your friends come, and it's a struggle on some other nights at times. So yeah, just something different.
I've noticed a bit of a trend recently with touring that I think is definitely supported by just how we naturally have changed the way we do all kinds of things these days. And once upon a time, someone would go, right, I'm booking a tour, or there's an album release, and so we're going to tour that album. And basically what happens is then they tour like every day for 6 months. They go on a big tour. But what I've noticed now, and even I was listening to Chris Stapleton on a podcast recently, and he said, my tours, I do 2 or 3 nights a week. My voice can't do a tour like that. So I just play Friday and Saturday nights and maybe a Thursday. And we fly out and do that part of the thing, and then we come home, and then we go to another city or another 2 cities. So the question I'm saying is, are you looking to do things like, as opposed to do a tour which is 4 weeks long, go out and do 1 or 2 or even 3 nights on the weekend, and then come home for a few days, and then go back out the following weekend?
Yeah. I think for sustainable creative people that don't know my history, this album that I've released is sort of coming back from quite a long break from performing my music, and in a lot of ways sort of starting again with promotions and name recognition, and just, you know, a fan base that maybe, you know, I used to have, that was quite active, but haven't seen much activity, so they've sort of dropped off a little bit. There's certainly been a lot of people that have come out the woodwork and you know, supported the album, and it's been wonderful. But for the most part, I'm kind of starting again a little bit. So it's always tricky to structure a full, you know, block to block tour when you don't have a decent base to build from, because the easier thing to do always is, if you're going to somewhere in Bendigo that atypically does acoustic artists on a Sunday afternoon, or, you know, a place in Warrnambool that has a Thursday night, you know, you sort of stick close to what the venues and the usual live music calendar of the venues is doing, and you fit around that, and you work out your accommodation, your travel routes around that. Because if you start introducing extra nights that they don't usually do and things, you know, you want to make sure that you've got some pulling power to justify that, or else very quickly you can give an unwanted first impression to some venues that you haven't played in. So it's I mean, there's so many considerations.
Yeah.
But it's very, as well for me, you know, being 35 years old, I'm doing some day job work during the week, so it's very much it's smart for me financially and musically to leave the weeks as they are and use the weekends as day trips, or as 2 or 3 day trips, or indeed, you know, if there's a Sydney opportunity, it's a quick flight up and back, you know, for a couple of days. So
yeah, so that makes sense. And as far as, you know, you saying you've got this block of time during the week where you work the day gig, and then you've got the other block of time where you're kind of a bit freer to do things like this, like
arts and crafts,
like putting stars on maps. I want to get back to talking about the album. So the Sum of Scenes is effectively, and certainly if you go to Spotify, it's 2 EPs. But if you get the disc, there's 2 on the disc. And so the first one is more of a band, blues, pop, rock kind of vibe. Not so much pop, I would say. But it's got a bit. It's got lots of hooks.
You know, I've always come from. Well, you know, I'm 35 years old. I'm a child of the 80s. I grew up in a late 80s, early 90s, sort of before the grunge thing sort of happened. Late 80s, early 90s. Era where there was certainly a lot of catchy stuff on the radio, and there was a lot of you know, that whole sort of 3.5 minute pop song with the choruses, with the pre-chorus, with the traditional song structures. When I started writing music, I sort of gravitated towards that. I gravitated towards trying to build in you know, a chorus that you know is a chorus. You know, that's the catchy chorus. And for a while you sort of think, oh, that's a bit too cheesy and I can't do that. And you find your sort of equilibrium of how much you're going to really succumb to what, you know, is in your memory. I listened to some very cheesy stuff from the 80s when I was growing up, versus how much artistically you want to sort of move forward. So they started like that, but obviously I'm very much influenced by a collection of both blues guitarists and soul music from across the years, as well as folk, more folky acoustic singer-songwriter stuff. So a lot of those colours fit around what is essentially a pretty straightforward, hopefully catchy song. And that's where I started with my first album. And when it came to doing more music recently, that's where I started with this. So it's kind of, I say some of it's blues. There is some blues stuff in there, but it's a bit of a mishmash of all sorts of different things, that kind of fits around that notion of straight ahead, simple songs you can sing along to with some interesting stuff going on.
Yeah, because harmonically they're not simple. Right. I mean, that's where myself as a writer, I'm listening and going, oh, that's doing some really cool stuff. But as I'm also have that ability as a listener just to listen, and just to do that thing where just sing along. That's the chorus, that's a pre, that's a bridge, and they've got the song structures that we're familiar with. But there's really interesting stuff going on with it. I wanted to ask about because you've got the 5 songs in the first part, and then 5 songs which are more acoustic based, which incidentally you talk about song structure. Some of the stuff in the acoustic side is a little bit different, like it's not conventional.
Maybe, yeah.
Chords don't fall exactly when you think they're going to, or harmonically go to the chord that you go, oh well, that's what there's some interesting things going on there as well. But the question that I have around the 2 sides is, because you just said before that it's your first kind of foray back after a bit of time off, where you were still performing as a musician, but doing the kind of thing that I do a lot more of, which is weddings and pub gigs and stuff like that. Did these songs were this project put together, and then you decided you were going to do 2 things, or was there an idea from the beginning to go, I've kind of got these things fit into this category and this fit into this category, and I'm going to do 2 EPs, and then you go, actually, no, I'm going to put them on the same release?
No,
I'm wondering over the story, because it's...
Well, it basically comes down to the fact that I thought quite short term for a while with things, because it'd been a long time since I'd done songwriting. When I sort of returned to it, it'd been a while, and for various different reasons to do with life. Yeah. And when I started again, I didn't know how that was going to go and what sort of songs would come out, and initially I wrote some things that I was happy with, but I could tell that I was a little rusty with it. But what it did is it sort of lit a bit of the flame for songwriting and looking at my own music. And I think a lot of people that write music have, whether it's in notebooks, whether it's in voice memos, or session files on a computer in Logic or something, they've got an archive of music that they've written. And I had this bunch of songs that I had written but not done anything with since my first album, and I started listening to them, and I thought, well, maybe I could just kind of put them down in some way, and I didn't even want to think about releasing it or any of that sort of crazy self-promotion angle. And fortuitously, my day work is at a music education business that shares a facility with a recording studio. So I was very easily able to say to one of the guys, let's just start doing some sessions and record some stuff. And that was actually 3 songs that I'd had for a while, and 1 that was in the newer batch. And then as I got into the process, I ended up writing the 5th as well. I ended up writing Let Go as I got into the process. But I sort of recorded them first, not really thinking anything of anything. And they were sort of similar to what I'd done in the past in that nature. And then when I had, by the time I'd finished that, I kind of caught up with myself songwriting wise, and I was writing some different sorts of things. And like you said, maybe experimenting with the maturity of coming back after a while with some different types of chord structures or chord lengths or different things. So what I discovered after I'd finished the first side is that I had some other songs that were stripped back and more acoustic and more, I guess, indicative of the sort of music that I'd been listening to since not songwriting. You know, I'd gone through a very big old country and Americana phase. I'd gone through a very big, in that, a lot of people I know go through a Ryan Adams phase. That's just the thing that you do. I discovered...
I went through mine. I can tell you, I went through mine in 2000 to 2002.
Was that with Gold?
Gold, yeah, Whiskey Town, then
Whiskey
Gold.
Town, right? Yeah.
And I hated Gold.
Yeah, I bought Gold.
But
I have Gold here somewhere.
But I love it.
My house.
But I hated it because it wasn't Whiskey Town.
Right.
You know what I mean? I was like, why? Because I've probably found him about 6 months before Gold. So Heartbreaker as well, which is still it's different.
Yeah.
For anyone who's not a big Ryan Adams fan, just bear in mind, hang with us, we'll stop talking about him in about 40, 45.
Not Brian.
No, he kicks you out of the concert if you ask for Summer of 69, apparently.
Yeah.
But I can totally relate to... Because he's got such a huge catalogue, you go, well, I better listen to all this stuff.
Yeah.
And there is lots of gold in there.
Yeah. Pardon the pun. But I bought Gold back in the day because of the radio single, New York, New York.
Yeah.
Because at that time, like you and I are again now, we're playing covers music and you hear the sort of muso-y one-hit wonder songs that come on, whether it's, Gavin DeGraw or it's Eric Hutchinson or it's a John Mayer or a Jason Mraz or Ryan Adams. You sort of hear them and you delve into it a little bit.
And you want to put them in the set because like, oh, this is great. This is a real song.
That's right. Yeah. So I had it, but I never really appreciated it. But I sort of delved back into it with Heartbreaker and Jacksonville City Nights and a whole range of different things. And then friends started to give me some other things to listen to. And I think when you get into something, it's almost like that treasure hunt or that almost like Ancestry.com. You just, as soon as you find it, you want to find out all the little areas that it came from. And, like if I got into Stevie Ray Vaughan very, very young. So invariably you want to go back to, the stuff that he did that was inspired by Hendrix and the stuff with Albert King. And then you sort of track your way through all these blues, this blues lineage. And I did the same thing with Ryan Adams, and I discovered an amazing album called Southeastern by Jason Isbell, which is just
incredible,
a flooring record. So I got into all this different sort of acoustic singer-songwriter stuff, which kind of harkened back to when I started playing guitar. I was a Paul Simon, James Taylor, Joni Mitchell, kind of real, I suppose, mainly 70s kind of folk stuff.
Which, even though now it's 2018, I mean, I'm 41, you're 35. When did you start playing guitar?
2002.
Okay, so I started in 1990. So for me, getting into 70s stuff in 1990, that's not a huge time difference. Yeah. But for us saying, even now, if you just started playing to say, oh, 1970s stuff. Well, that's 40 odd years ago. That's a huge time. But even for you, if you started in 2002.
Well, I had my folks had a record collection which comprised of Santana, Cream, Jimi Hendrix, but also Paul Simon and James Taylor. They had other random like Neil Diamond,
Leo Sayer.
Well, not Leo Sayer. I think
my folks.
Harvest by Neil Young.
Yeah, okay.
So a whole range of that stuff that I heard around the place, and so when I came to playing guitar initially, that's what I started to want to learn.
Yeah, awesome.
Because of the acoustic guitarness of it, and the fact that it was, I wanted to make it sound exactly like I was.
Well, there is that
sitting there,
that element of music from that era as well, where you pick up an acoustic guitar and let's say a song like Blackbird, and you go, boom, boom. Oh, that's what that is. So much of the music these days, which is electronic and produced, you go, well, you can't make that sound on an acoustic instrument. You have to know the computer side of stuff, which of course kids these days or people who are into that do. That's how they start. So they have that advantage.
It's funny because nowadays. Like here's me saying nowadays, it sounds like in my day. But nowadays I run into people who, like I was at a trivia night a little while ago, and I pride myself on being the dude that you give me the first 2 seconds of most songs, and I'll tell you the artist and song title. I'm the dude. I'm like I come into my own at that point.
You're the Spicks and Specks champion.
Yeah, but with new songs, it's very much, you might get, a beat for 20, 30 seconds before the main crux of the song comes in. But people that I knew at this trivia night would be like, they got it bang on, because what the acoustic guitar little licks and phrases that I remember were to me, now people recognise the types of beats, the types of snare, and the type of sound, and do you know what I mean? It's yeah. So it's all relative, I suppose. But getting back to the record, when I finished the first part, I had 5 songs that were quite different, and then I just thought, well, I don't even know if I'm releasing anything really.
Sure.
I'm enjoying this process. The fun part is writing it and recording it, and then as soon as you go into marketing and publicity town, it's a little bit of a different animal. So I contacted the Aviary in Abbotsford, which is the home of so much great music that's happened, new music from the last few years, and from that sort of union came these next 5 songs, and then a little while into the process, kind of nearing halfway through that, I was like, well, this is really good. I've got to release this, but what do? I've got 2 sets of 5, and it's, is it 2 EPs? How do I go about it? And blah blah blah. So it very much kind of, I didn't pre-plan it way out. I very much kind of assessed it as I went through, and invariably it was, at my folks' place listening to Harvest by Neil Young on their vinyl player at some family occasion, and the side A finished, turn over onto side B, Old Man.
Yeah, right.
And I just thought, well, why not just put 2 discs? I mean, these are essentially 2 halves of my life and my musical influence and me in a way, like anyone that knows me really well will know that I can be very silly and distract from situations.
You are the
puns and
king.
Bad jokes and all that sort of stuff. But then there's quite a serious sort of singer-songwriter introspective side. So it's very much a mirroring of where I've been in recent times, but also in general, a bit mirroring myself, I guess. So it just seemed like the right thing to do.
Yeah, good.
Even though, when you come to putting things out digitally nowadays, it's very, like, I didn't really want it to just be one album, because so it's 2 parts online. But
no, I like it. It's good. I like that there's a part A, or part 1, part 2. Do you find that? So you've obviously done the creating of the music, and then there's been a space of time between that and going, right now I'm going to gear up to releasing it, doing the things around that. I find that for me, the making of the music bit is what I like. I'm not so fond of being in the studio type thing, but I like the writing, and I do like the writing and the creating. And then I feel like, oh, it's done now. And then you go, oh, I'm going to release it. Oh, here's a whole other part of my brain that I don't necessarily know how to use.
Absolutely.
Well. In the course of just a few conversations I've had, this is the 7th chat I've had with someone, I've come to realise how...
7th?
Yeah. I've come to realise how...
8th on the priority list.
That's not true, actually. You were the first person I messaged.
I know.
You were actually the first person I messaged.
Things have been crazy. It's my fault. I'm only joking. Cut that out.
No, I'm not editing that. But, I want to encourage you that if you do want to do one of these podcasts too, like, you should definitely do one, because they're really enjoyable.
Well, it's I don't want to distract from what you're saying, but I've been thinking about this for so long, because coming into, I really did have that point where I was like, I have 5 songs, and then I have another set of 5, and I feel like this has been a wonderful process. And what if I just don't do any more with that?
Yeah.
There's a part of you that goes, well, you've invested all this time and money, and you really should, it's worth getting out there, and you should just, put your head down and do it. And there's a part that says to me in that it's just going to be a whole lot of computer time and admin time. And it's, in the past when I've done that, I've been in some situations, I've been lured into situations where I've maybe gone a bit hard with it and gone a bit too sort of crazy with that. And maybe that's choked the ability to keep writing or to keep, being
exactly
balanced
what I was
in
about
things.
to ask,
Yeah. But invariably, it's ultimately the reason why I decided to do it was that I've had too many really special experiences live and connections with people about my music to ignore that. And the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow really is the reason why there's two reasons why I started playing music from the start. And I started as a drummer in school, given my great uncle was a drummer and my grandpa was, them both were huge jazz fans, and I got into proper drumming very, very early on. But even in that, the two reasons why I started playing music was, one, because I have a real perfectionist part of me that really wants to see the challenge of a piece of music in front of me or something to learn, and see the challenge of learning that properly, precisely, and being able to replicate that and draw some pride from the fact that you've been able to reproduce this in a live sense. And that's similar to songwriting, to bring something into existence from nothing and to sit back. The best times for me with songwriting are when I have a voice memo or something, or I've got a playlist that I chuck in the car, or I'm listening to something in the car. And that time where I realise that, this is actually kind of a finished song, and now I get to sort of figure out how the rest of it works.
Right.
So that's sort of one side of it. And the other side is really that connecting with people is the ultimate feeling. I had very early on when I started playing music, I got pulled out of an open mic night in Mornington down there on the peninsula, and put into a covers band situation in pubs where I was doing 2 nights a week. And very early on, those gigs were to packed dance floors on a Friday and Saturday night that were just loving it. And you begin to realise, and even before that, I had some really good experiences with little gigs that, as I look back, would have been terrible and really naive. But you begin to realise the correlation between, hang on, if I do this here, then they really, really love that. And then by extension, I've got the ability to make these people have a really good night and have a really good time. And then as you start performing your own music and people start to appreciate that, it's on another level of connecting emotionally or lyrically with people. And that to me is really cool. I've always been I've always loved to meet people and to sort of delve into their experiences versus my experiences around a certain thing, to shared experiences, but where they come from.
Different
with it.
Perspective on the same experience. Yeah.
And it takes a while to do that, because I with songwriting, I think, certainly with me and some other songwriters that I've spoken to over the years, you start songwriting, or I started songwriting thinking, I don't want to give away too much here. I don't want to write I want to write this song about this person, but I don't want them to know. And so you start constructing all this he, she, they, and stories about other people. And then as you sort of mature as a songwriter, you become more and more okay with I and me and you and giving that part of yourself to the song. And then as I've come back to writing, some of the songs that I've written have really connected with some people, and it's been really, really amazing. And that's the other necessary side that makes me go, well, I'll put up with some admin. I'll put up with all of this.
Well, I was about to say just before, which
I've just waffled.
You beautifully linked back to what I was going to say in the course of the last 6 conversations, this is the 7th, I've learned that you can be creative in the admin side of what we do, because there's that, I get, like I said, I get all this reward and catharsis from doing the creating of the songwriting and then making the music and connecting with whoever I'm inventing it with in the studio or whatever, which I find really enjoyable. And then it's like, I guess I've got to do all this admin stuff. And I've learned that from observing what people have said, is that no, there's a creative element to that, and there's a connection element to that stuff as well. And I never saw it until the conversations that I've had, and then the reflection that I've had upon it. It's like, maybe I can do more of that, and it be something that I get something out of. Also, incidentally, that side of it is the bit that gets me to the next gig or the next project or whatever. So it is a necessary. What I would have said that's a necessary evil, and they're like, no, that's just a necessary part of the creative process. Which is interesting because you, one of the things I wrote down to ask you is, and it's said it to Craig as well when I spoke to him, that from the outside it's easy for us to look at what you put out there and go, that guy's so prolific, and what he puts out there is such high quality. I'd love to have a Simon Imrei in my corner going, Dom, that's not ready yet. Like, because I feel like you've just got such a good eye for that.
Right.
I wonder, is that your eye, or do you have some people that you go, hey, can you look over this before I put it out? Does it need any tweaking?
In with the music or with?
Well, with everything. I mean, I know that. So the music, and then I saw the first half of your CD launch. I managed to shoehorn that in between 2 gigs, and it was, it just looked beautiful.
Yeah.
Like I walked in and went, this is great. Like the vibe of the place it was just, the aesthetics of it was so beautifully put together. And then even then you all came out the way you came out, and the way they had the arrangement of the musicians in the space. Just, who does he think of all this and just know it's going to look this good? Like who's like, and I imagine, because I know you well enough to know that you do have that ability. But do you also have this kind of offsides where you go, can you look over this for me, because I'm a bit too close to it?
Well, a little bit. I think with songs, I've always, everything that I've sort of recorded, and this is maybe something that with the next thing that I do, I will do differently. But with everything that I've recorded, I feel like I can't really go into it, and even if I've got a whole lot of ideas, I can't really go into it, in a collection of barking orders and really sort of structuring everything. I know that when I did the first 5 songs of the new album, I actually demoed them, and I had a lot of the arrangements, and I sort of planned out a lot of how I thought they would be in the end result. And some of them stayed pretty close to that, some of them didn't. But when I got into the studio, I invariably sort of, the guy that I was working with became another producer, and he sort of called me out on some things. And in that creative process, I like to work with someone, whether it's a producer or whether it's someone else sort of external that comes in every now and then, because there are what I have to say is self-taught guitarist, and
we're both putting our hands up.
You're self-taught, but I believe
I'm university corrected.
I believe you have a much greater understanding of guitar than I do, and for a long time, I didn't want a greater understanding of guitar. I just wanted to do what I did, and if it felt right, it was there. So really, lead guitar wise, I'd never branch away from the same sort of blues pentatonic scale and all this sort of stuff. So I believe half by just circumstances and half by design. I have a limited knowledge, theoretical knowledge of music, and so often it's good for someone else externally to come in and offer me things that I wouldn't hear in terms of parts and things like that because I just don't. I'm conditioned to a certain collection of ideas.
We definitely all have our go-to preference stuff.
Yeah.
And do you notice that, when you said it's for anyone who's not a musician or a songwriter anyway, but we definitely have that tendency when we find something we like Ryan Adams, to go and find out as much as we can about all aspects of it. And so what you find is certain songwriters or guitarists or whatever, once you really dip into their catalog, you go, oh, that's that thing they do. And when you really listen, you hear the same ideas over and over. And sometimes, like on my EP that I released earlier this year, there's a couple of guitar solos. There's 6 songs on it. I think there's 4 guitar solos. 2 of them have an identical guitar lick in it, right? And it's like, it would have been really cool to have that position, to have someone there go, do you realize that that's done twice?
Right.
And then us make the choice to keep one or both, but actually make the choice.
So even in all the listening and mixes and rough band, you didn't hear it?
Didn't hear it until like one day I went, oh, that's that thing that I do. So I just getting back to that point, like we all have a limited vocabulary, or at least a go-to thing that you think is really works. And for some people it's chord progressions, and some people it's lyric ideas. It's great to have a person that says, you did that in that song, so if we're going to record these 2 songs, maybe you want to change that line or that.
Well, I came into it when I did the second half. I came at it from a completely different perspective, because I know that everything that I've heard from the Avery as a studio has been amazing, and I met Fraser and Nick, the guys behind the Avery, and was really just impressed by them in general. So I essentially gave them acoustic guitar versions of all 4 songs. It's another one. I was going to do another song as the last track of the album, but then part the way through the album, I wrote the song choices, which ends up as the last track on part 2.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but that again, I gave him an acoustic version of. So he basically created the tapestry of instruments and the arrangements to a point, and then we sort of collaborated back and forth there. But I'm sort of more a fan these days of going, this is where I think is a really good point. Now I'm going to engage the artist or whatever I'm doing. Certainly with a lot of the music videos that I've done, it's come from a concept that I have, but I don't really want to drive. I don't want to drive the bus too far, Like I just want to go, this is where I sort of see it, take it or leave it. What do you think? And put it out into the world. And that's where some of the most enjoyable stuff has come from, because I would never have heard pedal steel in the way that it is on Unseen on the album. I would never have imagined the type of animation I could get in the music video for that song. But then all throughout the album, there's been things where I'm like, I would never have thought of that. There's a fantastic guitarist by the name of Robbie Melville, who is in a band called Clever Horse and a range of other bands. And the song on the first part of my album, Lonely Don't Know Me, was a satisfactory kind of song from an arrangement perspective. It had everything that you would think. And then he just sort of came in one day and put this little dual guitar harmony part on it that just gave it a whole other sort of thing. And I would never have thought of that, So,
And that song, that's what, with those guitar parts in that song, I was listening to it over the last couple of weeks. And I like how that song, like those guitar parts change subtly, and then in the second verse, it's different to the first bit.
So he did those parts and the rhythm stuff, and then I did the other electric parts. Like there's a bit of a muted guitar thing in the chorus and some other bits and pieces. So, yeah.
What was the? I'm just an unrelated question, but it's related to the EP. That's on the album, the 2 EPs.
Yeah.
Yep. What was the time frame between beginning recording to releasing?
Don't ask.
Exactly, right. So this is something that...
That's because I don't know. I'm not just being a rude guest.
But this is something that people who... There's 2 points to this which I think is important to speak about. People who don't, say, make albums or they are admirers of artworks, but they don't make them. Like, for instance, with my EP is 22 minutes of music on it, and it's like, how long did that take from starting to record to release? And it's like, that's a really long time, because of course life happens in between, and then self-doubt happens and all the other kind of things that creep in. And the other aspect to it is that actually it just generally takes a really long time to get something done. So if you've got 4 hours in the studio in 1 week, and then you don't get to go back for another 2 weeks, and then you get to do 2 nights of 4 hours, and then if you condense down how long it takes to record something, it might be 2 weeks in the studio, but it takes 3, 4, 5, 6 months and then you've got to get, when's the pedal steel guy available?
There's a range of different factors, isn't there? And I mean, like, on the subject of, the sustainable creative, it's very costly to I know when I was at the Avery, I mean, not to say that the Avery is particularly expensive, but we made a decision to do sort of 3 or 4 days in quick succession, and like over a 2-week period. There was, I think, 2 blocks of 2, I forget now, to get most of the crux of it down. But then there was drums, bass, guitar, keyboards, plus there was 3 backing vocals, plus a percussion guy that we paid as session musicians for all of that. Plus there's some other odds and ends that come into it. So all of a sudden it's quite a large investment to do all of it at once. Yeah. So part of the reason why some people stretch it out is financial, but the other part is due to some of these people's availabilities, like you say. The other part is that you can I sort of like the record a bit, have it in the car for a couple of weeks, dissect it, see how it's sitting, kind of thing. But sometimes I'm just gonna try and not choke. I just almost had a choking moment. Sometimes that process you can let it take too long, and you need to sort of snap yourself out of it and just rip the bandit off, so to speak, and just move to the next stage. Because I was speaking with a friend of mine, Louise, who's in a band called Louie and the Pride that I am also in.
I'm going to ask her to be on this show as well.
Yes. She and I we're going in tomorrow to a studio because we're in the midst of recording another EP for the band, and we're going in tomorrow to do some last changes before mixing. And some of a couple of the people in the band are not, I don't think I'm speaking out of school here, but are not as across all of the intricacies of mixing. So if you give some people too much time with a bounce, which is just an actual export off the desk, really rough levels, then they'll get used to where certain things are at, or they'll go, I really feel strongly that this isn't loud enough, and this. Whereas it's like if we just sort of let all that go, when we get through mixing, that will clean a lot of that up.
Yeah.
And you sort of knowing when to look 2 or 3 steps down the track and when not to is really important. And that can really I always think about that when I'm in recording projects, because sometimes you really need to stop and assess, and sometimes you really need to just let it happen for a while. So again, you're not sort of leading the witness.
I find that's a real. It's not an issue, but it's a real trap with recording at home, but by yourself, for example, or just the modern the modern technology of how clean it is. If you listen to so many of the classic records, and of course, not to suggest that I'm creating anything that could be compared to that. Well, you can compare anything, but more to the point, when you really listen to a lot of the great music, it's rough, it's out of time, it's terrible, and as individual parts, if you really listen, like whenever you hear those, this is the isolated drum track from this. But in the context of the band, when you listen to, say, Sweet Child of Mine, like you go, well, as a performance, as a band, that's great. It's got a great vibe to it. But when you listen to the isolated drum or the isolated guitar parts, like it's so out of tune or it's so out of time. And of course, maybe that's musicians like finding it. But that's what happens when you're at home and you end up going through. Like I've done some vocal recording for people when we've spent 7 hours doing a vocal track for one tune, where I'm singing on their song, and by an hour into it, like I don't know what song I'm singing anymore. Like I've sung that line, I've sung the first line 10 times, and then and I'm doing it bit by bit. So the process of recording takes away any of the magical,
but
vibe.
also when the mechanism through which you're capturing the songs, like that recording screen, that edit window, presents you with not only the audio representation of what you've just done, but a visual depiction of things. There's a real, it's that old argument of, do you edit drums onto the click?
Yeah.
Or do you leave it sort of ahead, or it's that old sort of soul take of where the beat is, and are you ahead or are you early? And it's none of that really matters, because it's about the performance of the musicians together, and it's about all of those intangibles. But in the nature of what you're doing, recording yourself, or in a small group recording situation where you can see things are out, and you just automatically feel like you want to fix it. You've got the ability to use vocal tuning plugins, so you just think, well, I'll just put it on everything, and that's part of what you do. Whereas it's
the thing you just said about it's the musicians playing together. That's for people who maybe don't record. I mean, most of the time these days, the recording that you listen to these days, it's not musicians recording together. It's the drummers playing along to a scratch track, then the bass players come in and played along to whatever the drummer played, and then we all add layers upon layers. And so that's where I find it is really easy to actually be able to nitpick parts because people didn't play together. So, I would love to be in a situation like not the last 2, but 3 records ago, Doors went into one of my favorite bands, Doors, not The Doors, but Doors, Dawes, if you're listening. They went into a studio and they recorded. Well, they did a week of gigs playing the new songs from the new record, and then they went into a studio for 5 days and played the album live.
Yeah,
and
I think the Foo Fighters did a similar thing.
And it's when you listen, you go, there's one song where there's clearly a bum bass note.
Yeah,
there's another track where he's stepped on the wrong pedal before the guitar solo, and it's in there.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a great band. They play beautifully together, but there are mistakes on the record, but they don't sound like mistakes because it actually does sound like they're playing together. But if they'd done that individually, recorded each track individually, they would not have been able to get away with that stuff.
No.
On the vibe of that record. And I think that's something that I would really love to do one day. Is like, all right, guys, we've got a week. We're gonna play this stuff together, and then we're gonna go and record it.
I think I will do that. I mean, I've got a bunch of the other songs that I've had from over the years with that are more of that sort of stripped back folky thing. I think I will probably go into a studio with some, record to tape, just do a live recording of a whole bunch of stuff.
To actual tape?
Mostly.
Yeah, cool.
Well, I did the Avery stuff to tape. They've got tape machine in there, which was awesome. So I just do essentially a live recording of a solo acoustic album, and then really be sparing with what I add to try and just get a performance. because it really it interests me greatly.
Can I ask you, do you, with all the sort of admin you're doing now in lead up to, well, obviously you've done the release stuff and then you're organising other things and then the tour, are you musically creative during this time as well? Because I find it impossible, which is one of the reasons why I shy away from it, because I always want to try to continue to write.
Yeah.
And whenever I get into too much admin, I just don't.
One thing that I know about my songwriting is that I'm not really, I mean, I'm just going to say I'm not prolific. If I speak to some other people that I've spoken to, well, some people I've spoken to recently are like, dude, you got heaps of songs. I'm talking about things that I've had over the years. But I don't think, if I looked at the years that I've been songwriting, that I have been with songs that I'm happy with, that I've been particularly prolific. So I'm always conscious of not going, I want to write all the time, and then invariably writing stuff that I'm not really happy with or that I'm ready to write, which
that
might
makes sense.
sound a bit weird, but
no.
I think, I need to allow myself time every now and then to be creative and write music. But every now and again might be once every 3 or 4 weeks, and then when I'm in that, when the time is right, I'm pretty confident I can come up with something, at the time. Whether, how good it is another thing, but I don't repeatedly write. It's not like a weekly thing that I would ever do.
Sit down. Yep.
But it does stifle you somewhat, from a headspace perspective.
Sometimes I do feel like there's a build up, like an ebb and flow. So you go, well, I haven't written anything for a while, and then you get into a space and you go, oh, bang, bang, bang. There's the crux of 3 really good ideas, and then you kind of refine them over a period of time. But effectively, you've done the bulk of the creation of the song, and then you just mess with it over a bit of time, and then maybe nothing happens for a while.
Yeah.
But I do find that, look, so much of my life is based around, and I guess everyone's is based around recognizing that you've got a fear about something, and then trying to work out, how do I live with that, or how do I solve that, or how do I integrate that fear without it being too much of an issue. And one of the things I find about being creative is getting those roadblocks and turning them into just little speed bumps, and not detouring too much. There's a whole bunch of road metaphors that didn't need to come into the conversation, but
Vic Road sponsored.
Well, I was just looking at the map.
Yeah. Look, I think every now and then I'm in those moments, and I can usually sit down and write something. Occasionally, I've kind of had to write. Something's been coming up, and I've sort of been in situations where I haven't done something in a while, and I've booked a gig or something's come up, and I'm like, right, you have to come up with something.
Yeah.
And I've had a couple of songs that I've recorded that have come out of that.
Well, I've done that with Matt twice. So Matt and I, obviously, we do podcasts together. We do lots of cover gigs together. And for the Songs in the South a few months ago, I said, do you want to do this thing with me? He said, oh, yeah, I'd love to. I said, but you have to write 3 new songs. And I do as well. And he wrote 2 and I wrote 1. And I wrote 1 3/4. So I finished.
Did you play the 3/4 song?
No, I finished.
You just get to a point and go, that's it.
I had a quarter of the song and I finished it. And actually, I've gone back to it to see, is it finished? Because I wasn't sure if it was. Yeah. And I almost lost it during the gig. I started singing that particular song and I had tears in my eyes, like, oh, I'm not ready to sing this. It was quite full on. And I don't get those moments particularly often, but I did that day. And we've got one in October where I said we're going to do another original gig together and we both have to write another song. And I actually find that really helpful when I've got something to go,
Yeah.
to work towards.
Yeah.
So maybe that is something that I should do more often.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've had success from that. Yeah, I'll have to come along to your gig and see the fruits of this labour.
Oh, it'll be a live podcast recording and then a gig. So we're about 50 minutes in. So I might take up less of your day, but maybe I can ask you one or two last questions.
You can keep talking, and I don't know how you edit things together or what the situation
No,
is.
mostly I've not edited. I've just they've been flowy conversations.
If you feel like we haven't got to things that you would like to get to, just fire away.
Well, one of the questions I would like to ask you,
Mm-hmm.
because I haven't asked these in the past episodes, but they've generally come up as here's a bit of a tip.
By the way, before you ask,
Yes,
I'm realizing that it's lunchtime, so I hope that my stomach noises are not coming through the microphone. But
Hopefully
if they are, that's an added.
Well, there we go.
Sort of soundtrack.
And a bonus. It reminds you to make sure, as a sustainable creative, that you eat.
I should have had some sustained milk before this.
I've never had that stuff.
No, neither have I.
No. It always looked a bit like, maybe I'll just have those shakes, like they call it man shake and stuff like that. I was like, I might just make it myself or just eat some cereal and drink some milk. Yeah.
If you're eating a cereal, would you eat Sustain or?
Is there a cereal called Sustain? I don't know.
Anyway, sorry, I'll digress.
No, it's all right. These things happen with these things. So, to someone who, because what I'm finding in these conversations is we're all very much still trying to find our way through whatever new project we're on, or the next, because the next project's a new project, and it's I haven't done that project before, so I don't necessarily know what my process is. And as I said to you before, it would be great for me to have like a Simon Imrei to quality control my work, which I think the pros who are like they're full-time artists and they've got managers and they've got booking agents and they've got people that are doing the work that we are also trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to worry about that. They just can create the art and rock up and do the gig.
Mm-hmm.
Now, which I'm not saying they can just do that. What I mean by that is that it's right for that to be someone's full focus.
Yep.
Whereas we don't have, I would say, the luxury of that. We have to do all the bits.
That's right.
So would you say you've learned anything from this current project that you go, I'm definitely going to keep that in mind for my next thing? We've got some...
There's some lawn mowing
going on, but that's okay. It's just stopped. Go.
I've learned a ton. Goodness me. Well, see, here's the backdrop to things. Like, given that I'm coming from not doing anything in so long, I've done a lot of things for the first time in a long time, and I've done a bunch of things for the first time ever.
Yeah.
I've never done an animated music video with someone before. I never really did a proper album launch for my previous record for a lot of different reasons. I've never really done a tour. I've never really worked with a publicist before, which I worked with this time. And then there's other things like general gig booking and things like that, when you get back in the swing of admin, you need to know, if you want to play a gig there, you need to know roughly what nights they do music, who the band booker is, what the situation is, what the capacity is maybe, if it's ticketed, how many people you can bring versus what they expect you to bring and things like that. So a lot of those real spreadsheety kind of background research things are sort of non-negotiable, and they're the things that are grunt work that it would, I actually had a friend of mine assisting me with for a little while, just because of the sheer volume of stuff that I wanted to wrap my head around. I've been trying to equip myself with as up-to-date information on venues and band bookers, on touring logistics, on digital marketing sort of solutions and bits and pieces there, distribution through iTunes and Spotify and all the various channels through there. Busking regulations around different shires in Melbourne, record stores, who does consignment, who does in-house live in-store concerts. New things like Facebook groups, Spotify playlists, various things like that. By extension, for your assets, video, photographers, videographers, people that do animation, people that are, there's so many different arms to content and the, web design people and things like that. There's so many different things to consider. So I've learned a lot getting to the bottom of a lot of that different stuff. I should say publishing as well, and royalty-based stuff as well.
And that's just the stuff, that's just what you have listed off the top of your head.
Yeah, that's just the foundation of a lot of different things, But then...
Look how I'm holding my head now. You've told me that. So I'm like, I think I've got a headache.
Yeah, but there's a lot when you're doing it by yourself. And I had some help for a little while. I've had some help on and off from a social media person, because I sort of identified very early on that was just a bit too much information for me to take in and manage day to day. So this is a person that understands all algorithms and advertising across Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and various different things, and can advise me on, yes, I've got this video or I've got this piece of content. What's the best thing for me to do with budget or with things? And that's, I may learn more about that as I go along, but at the moment it's just a whole other world that is constantly changing. So it's thinking of myself as a creative, but also as a business.
Yes,
it makes most sense to me to outsource things that are like that, which are just so much effort to keep up with it. The constant changing landscape of social media and digital marketing. But for the most part, I've done it myself, and I've learned a couple of sort of key things about timing, I suppose. The big thing has been timing. I've learned a couple of big things about publicity and the way that as an artist I should work with a publicist to best maximize that output. I sort of came into it thinking, I've got a publicist, I'm going to outsource to this publicist, and that's how it is, and they're going to do all this stuff. But I've learned a lot about how much of an active role I need to play myself in things to so we can feed off that relationship. Okay. So there's a ton, but I think for me, and you talk about cringing about all the stuff, what I always remember is, because of the break and coming back into it, it's a one-way street. I am doing all of this stuff. I'm giving all of my time and effort to this thing. And if you do it for long enough, and again, that's why we're touring, and I'm thinking about long-term goals now after the record. If you do it for long enough, then things start coming back your way. And that's when it's not so much of a labour-intensive and time-intensive exercise admin. I was speaking to my good friends, the Weeping Willows, the other day, and they said that they've done shows all year and they have organised less than 10 of them.
Wow. And
the rest of them, whether it's supports on a tour or it's other things they've been invited to do, and that's just unheard of for me in my situation.
And they have been doing what you said, that they started doing this process that you're doing.
They did. They started out, and everyone has to be really active, just outward, and put it all out into the universe and do the time, and then things will come back your way. Whether it's, whether I'm doing a tour up regional Victoria, going through Malden, and then maybe next year the Malden Folk Festival contact me because, and it's not that, constant Googling, when's the festival dates there, now they're there, how do I apply, go through the application form. It's not that thing on a to-do list. If things will start coming back your way, and that's another pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for me, because I know that people that you've spoken to, like Craig and co, they're very much understanding, as I do, that all of this is about relationship building. It's about everyone helping each other in whatever little element of the music industry they're in. And after a while, people want to help you, and people see what you're doing, they see how hard you're pushing, and they give you a leg up. So that's the big thing that I remember about admin, and the point that I'm at, which is learning things and doing so much of it will dissipate and will become easier.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
You recently moved from working full-time to part-time in order to free up some time and probably some mental energy, because people who work a day job use a lot of energy on their day job, and then they have to come home and go, oh, that's right, I've got this other full-time job that I'm working on as well. And the tendency is for the original project to keep getting pushed back because there isn't the immediate necessity of I have to send an email today, unlike it is for your day job. Where you go, well, I have to do that because I'm there doing it. Was it how long was the thought process of you saying, I think I need to make this change in order to facilitate spending more time on our original stuff? Was that difficult, or was it just a matter of you just went, oh, I've got to do this? So
it took a little while when I reached the point of deciding that I wanted to release the albums and the two halves. I recognised in that list of things that I told you, I recognised how much I didn't know, and how much I was out of date, and how much, you can't just go to your mate that's spent 2 years of his life getting these contacts and everything together and go, can you just give me everything that you've done in one fell swoop? Like, it's just, you need to sort of, and then some of the stuff online is not as up to date as it should be, and so you need to put in the time to get up to speed with things. So when I started that process, there was a lot that I had to do. So I thought to myself, right, I've come from a full-time position. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop down to 4 days. I'm going to give myself a Friday, and that's my admin day. But then what I'm going to do, because I've still got 4 days and a reasonable day job wage, and at that stage I was just starting to do gigs as well, is I thought I'm almost the opposite to what I used to be, where I used to have so much time but no money, struggling artist, early 20s. Look at me. Now I had a reasonable income and very little time myself. So I initially got this social media person involved. I got a graphic designer involved. I got an admin assistant person, and I put a team around me that there was another couple of people as well in lesser roles. A team around me that could assist me in getting this work done as quickly as possible, because that was the necessary part that I just had to grunt my way through to get started with anything. Invariably, that reached a point where I needed to play more of a role, but also there were some things where it's like you have a conversation with someone about something and you say, I need your help with this thing. This is the thing, and these are the 5 steps to doing this thing. It'd be great if you could help me with that. But if they don't have the shared understanding and context to what you're doing, like some of the people that I was working with didn't, they came from maybe another industry outside of the music industry or whatever it was, then you find yourself in a situation where they do great work, but they don't quite understand the intricacies of what you sort of need.
Yeah.
So you find yourself sort of jumping in and doing things, and after a while there were some things that I just, I didn't at all want to micromanage anyone, but I sort of, if I took the time to explain all of the backstory and context, I may as well have done it.
Yeah. Right.
So it's a real sort of juggle, and it got to a point where things weren't sort of getting done the way that I needed to, or the way that I had hoped, and it was a point of like, well, I have to either drop more work or maybe this is not working. Maybe I do the thing that we were talking about before and just put my hands up and go, this admin thing's not for me. I'm just going to go back to writing songs. And after a lot of machinations, I ended up finding a happy medium at 3 days a week, which is a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, which gives me both a Monday and a Friday as admin days, but also a long weekend for regional trips or flights or whatever it is.
Yep.
And it gives me the flexibility in life that I sort of need, because you need to have some days where you can, whether it's doing something like this, whether it's shooting a music video, whether it's doing some sort of promo stuff, you need to have some days where you can sort of be on the ground doing things.
Yeah.
And for a while I was like, I'm going to outsmart all of this. I'm going to keep my day job. I'm going to have the income. I'm going to outsource, and I'm going to outsmart this whole thing. But it never really works, because invariably it's about relationship building, and you need to be there. You need to be, doing the things, meeting the people, sharing these experiences to help both your network of people grow, but also your music grow. And it comes from a really pure place, sharing these processes and these experiences with people, whether they're making a music video for you, or they're a radio station that you're getting in touch to try and get airplay, or whatever it is. It's just about meeting people and having a good chat. And
yeah, look, it's a lot like what when you are saying in this conversation, a lot of what you as Simon has said is you, and which is the collective you, and what I've gotten so far about the 7 conversations that I had is that everyone is saying that, like, this is what you've got to do in life, and life is about connecting with people, and it's been a common theme throughout. But the advice or the discoveries that you're sharing just there, you're saying you. But the great thing about the word you in that is, although it's a collective, like, I'm hearing it going, come on, mate, like, someone's like, you can do it too. If you want to do it, you've got to go. You've got to be the person to show up. Very much like I haven't wanted to do Skype conversations for this. I wanted to show up. I wanted to drive from where I live to show up to wherever someone was available to hang out with me for an hour or two to have the conversation, because like this is how you have this kind of conversation. Yeah. I'm not saying that I never will do a Skype thing. Sometimes, that'll be how it's got to happen. But
I think there's such a connotation with the word networking, where it just seems very corporate and business-like, and like, oh, now I've got to go to this event and network with people and stuff. And the whole adage of it's not what you know, it's who you know, just sort of, it seems to, for a while, I used to hear that and go, well, this record's great. Like, it doesn't matter if I know you. Like, why can't you just understand that I've put a lot of time into this, and this record's great. You should play it. Like, good music should. A lot of people tell you, just keep making good music and it will rise to the top. But then other people will keep networking. It's not what you know, it's who you know. But it's nothing more than having a good chat with someone. And if you're doing writing an email to someone, or you're calling someone, or you're at I was playing a gig at the Lily Street Tavern in Abbotsford the other week, and Keshi from Roots and All Triple J was there, and you don't think I'm going to go and network for this purpose, and I'm going to try and tell her these things, but you just sit down, you have a beer and whatever, and then after a while something will pop up and she will remember that, and it's very organic. Yeah. Overused word alert, organic. But it's just enjoying life and sharing things with people.
It's good.
And but look, on the subject of all of that, I will say the biggest thing that I've learnt that I will put into the next project that I do is that I will have an eye on the release when I'm starting the recording. Like, I don't think I will do it again where I make the thing and then I finish and then that's the thing, because you find yourself at odds with, oh, I wish I'd done that back then, or I wish I had a bit of content from there, or I wish I'd spoken with that person earlier, because certain magazines have huge, for publicity, have huge like
lead times
and stuff like that. So again, sort of timing. That's probably the biggest thing that I've learned. But as you know, people will sort of ask you things and offer you things.
That's great, actually. That's a great bit of advice. Keep an eye on have an eye on the release when you start the project, and it's certainly something that I didn't do, and had I had, it would have been a different result.
I was just speaking to someone the other day about life in general. We were talking about he's a covers musician, and he has a day job, like a part-time day job at a retail outlet, and he wants to get rid of it, and he's trying to find a way to justify his existence financially, but also he wants to get to a point of being a creative musician and writing, recording, releasing his music. And he was sort of talking about these kind of micro things that were going on in his life, these little areas that were frustrating him, whether it was some drunken imbecile at a gig was saying this and that was really frustrating him and sort of starting to affect the way he was feeling about playing gigs, or whether it was the hurdles of not having time personally for certain things, or whatever it was. And he was trying to structure his life in a way so he could be happy with, so he could fix these little things that were happening in his life. And I said to him that along the lines of having an eye on the release date, I said, the direction that you're going in is determined by the end goal. So if you, like, he went to James Bay gig at Hamer Hall recently, and he said he sat there and he was like, that's exactly what I want to do. And I said, if that's what you want to do, then that informs everything that happens before it, and you trace back from that. If the sorts of gigs that you're doing, if you're looking to get out of this retail job and you're wanting work, well, what don't you know about that place that you've got to get to? Whether you don't know about recording or publicity or various things, whether you start doing a part-time job for a media, or like writing some reviews, going to gigs or whatever it is, or you start, assisting in a studio, or everything that you sort of do will be informed by that sort of end goal. And that will fix and make all of these little micro symptoms feel much better.
That thing won't bother you as much.
Because I think that I've fallen in the trap, certainly over the years, of going, I want to do music over here. I need money. I've got to go over here to this completely separate job over here that is a bit soulless and corporate or whatever it is. And, ne'er the twain shall meet. Yeah. But certainly, I'm now in a job related to music education. I'm in a situation where I'm playing gigs that are other people's music, but that will allow me to perform my own music and sell CDs and meet people and connect with them on my stuff. And so I'm creating a world that is hopefully all on the same page with the direction.
Well, it's Venn diagrammy as well, isn't it? It's like, well, that's not completely separate to that. They overlap, and then that overlaps with that, and it's complementary.
I think that's really important. It's not always easy with work to do that, but I think that's important, and that's, you feel better about the struggles if you're on the way to the right place. Whereas if you're over here in retail land speaking to people that have the most ridiculous questions in the world, and you've got 6 hours to go in a shift, and you're like, what am I doing? Then,
Well, I have a lyric on a song that I haven't released, but the first line of the chorus is, if you don't know what you're looking for, that's exactly what you get. And it's very much like, well, if I don't know that I'm driving to Simon's house, then I'm just going to be driving a car. And maybe I'll end up there. I don't know. But if I don't actually know where I'm going,
probably eventually you will.
But it's it's definitely that idea of, well, if you know what you're aiming for, then you have to work out how you're going to get there. And by working that out, then you realize, well, the stuff that I'm focusing on right now, it doesn't really matter.
So we have probably recorded the longest thing that you've ever recorded.
Not quite yet. No.
Oh, right.
I did an hour and a half with Zeke.
Oh.
So if you want to keep going, we can. But this is your Friday that you've graciously given up some time.
No. Well, so. You've graciously written down some stuff to ask me. So I feel like it's incumbent on me to.
It's great. Like I just said, a lot of what these conversations have done for me, they've been really helpful because I feel like basically I've gone to some people who are doing things, and I know we're all kind of just kind of getting through life, but I've been able to speak to people who, in many of the things that I observe and I know about them, they're doing things that I go, oh, that's great. Like, it's really inspiring for me. That makes me want to continue to do the thing that I'm doing. And so much of the conversations have been, including this one, of basically, it's like, just keep swimming. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
I've greatly enjoyed.
End of all the questions?
Yeah, we are actually.
Oh, outstanding.
One thing I've really enjoyed since coming back from my overseas trip 2 years ago was almost immediately, the week I got back, I went to see you play in Brunswick on Sydney Road, and we went down the road and we had a whiskey and a chat, and then we ended up having a few other catch-ups, and very quickly we did the Songs of the South thing together. And
that was an important night with
Simon as well.
Yourself, me, and Simon Phillips.
Yeah.
Is he involved in one of these?
He's going to be doing one.
Yeah.
We were going to have a chat a few weeks ago, but he was in the midst of moving house, and I said, "Dude, it's okay. Don't stress. We'll get it done when everything's calmed down." But it was really important, and I feel like in that time, you and I have both done a lot of work to get our music out there again, and so we're sort of brothers on a similar journey in that sense.
Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart at times, the whole process, but yeah, I think like anything, you if you recognise something that you enjoy and that's fulfilling, then that's at the end of the road, and so that's where you head. And I've had some great times in the last since I started recording the album, but in the last sort of 18 months of releasing music, it's been great, and the balance of life has just about figured itself out.
Awesome.
Because I didn't know that I could get to that point. I wasn't sure if I could get to that point really, because of the sheer volume of stuff that I've had to do. And I would have done a podcast like this one, just called "How do they manage to do this?" And even Craig, is another one. He's got a family and everything. I just have no idea. People keep coming out with these things, and I'm like, how in God's name do they have time to do all of these things? And so, no, good on you for doing this and sharing some of these stories, because I'll certainly be keen to watch the other episodes.
Yeah, no, they've been really wonderful for me, and so I think people will. One of the things that you definitely get out of it is that we all find it overwhelming. We all look at other people and go, how the F do you get all that done? And as it turns out, they're going, you just do what you can do, and that's the key, isn't it? It's do what you can do, and then it gets out there. But if you look at the way the rest of the world operates and go, I can never do that, and just don't do anything, then you don't do anything.
Well, it's realistic expectations as well. If you make the commitment to yourself to, to be happy with doing what you can do, but by the same token to be happy with measuring your expectations, then that's really important. And for me, with the sort of music that I do, whether it's knowing how to talk about it, knowing how to describe it, knowing who to pitch it to, knowing, if I'm going to drive up the road to Ballarat, knowing what venues you're going to, knowing what you can expect from certain things is really important. And small victories lead to bigger goals.
I like that.
No doubt.
I like it. Well, I look forward to finding out about what you're doing with the tour as it unfolds.
Yes, hopefully it will. It's almost announceable.
Great. And for anyone listening, check out Simon online. I believe that you are selling your disc on Bandcamp.
I am, yeah.
That's
You can
right.
go to simonimrei.com, being IMREI, simonimrei.com. And through there, you can click the store link on the menu, and that will go to my Bandcamp page. Or if you already know Bandcamp, you can just go through there, and you can get both albums there. And the physical 2-disc thing is really that's
the thing to get because it's beautiful. I've got a copy of it and it's great.
Yes.
So thanks for sharing that with us. Thanks for hanging out with me today.
Thank you, mate.
And I will see you again soon, no doubt.
No worries.
All right. Salada biscuits. That's how I sign off.
Sure.